Good morning, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to be here and to be among such a international group that coming from different parts of the world. And I think that we all have human rights principle as a common value. Doesn't matter where we live. The topic which was given to me to speak was struggle on human rights in Afghanistan. Afghanistan, as you all know, is a small country somewhere in Asia. And we are in war or in conflict since 35 years. Before that, Afghanistan was a poor country, but we were not at war. We had some conflicts, small things, but not fully at war. And you know that we had a coup d'etat in 1978 done by a group which was called pro-Russian, and Moscow was supporting them, and they had the same idea. And so they did a coup d'etat, and then after a year and a half of the coup d'etat, when the people began to fight against the government, then the Russian invaded Afghanistan, of course. After the invasion of the Russian, again, it was the people of Afghanistan were fighting, and unfortunately the international community chose the most conservative group of people to fight against Russia because the fight was against the communism. So who could be the most useful people for them to use was the most conservative, uneducated group of people in Afghanistan. And then, unfortunately, the conservatism or fundamentalism Islamic idea is imposed on the overall situation in Afghanistan. So those people who were using religion for their personal political benefit, they became very powerful. So some of those who today we call them warlords were created by the international community in order to fight against Russia. So as I said that we were in 35 years of war. War itself caused a lot of violation of human rights. And of course, Afghanistan still is one of the poorest countries, and poverty itself caused a lot of violation of human rights. And also, Afghanistan is one of the most underdeveloped countries in the world, where we still have polio. I think it's 3 countries in the whole world has polio, and we are one of them. So it does show the access to health as a basic human rights, another challenge that we are facing in Afghanistan. And again, Afghanistan is one of the majority of the population in Afghanistan is illiterate, and they're not able to read and write even. So that is itself another problem and another big challenge to democratization and respect for human rights in the country. So what I mentioned, that we have war since 35 years, conflict in the country, we have poverty, one of the poorest country, we have the last developed country, we have illiterate people, the majority of people as illiterate, lack of education itself. These are all the reason that we have a lot of violation of human rights in Afghanistan. Unfortunately still continues. In Afghanistan, where we had the different regime, we had the pro-Russian, as I said, until and the Russian in Afghanistan from 79 until 89. The Russian left Afghanistan, the Russian soldier left Afghanistan in 89. After 10 years of extensive war and violation of human rights, no accountability. They were able to arrest the people. They were able to force the people for displacement. They really disappeared a lot of people. Nobody knows what was happened. There were no fair trial and fair trial or defense lawyer for the victims. Everybody who was against the opinion of the regime, they were arrested and killed and disappeared. Thousands of people, millions of people of Afghanistan became refugee, and we had more than 4 million in Pakistan. We had more than 3-4 million in Iran. Actually, we don't have the exact number because everybody was not registered. The people who were refugee in Pakistan were living in the camps. The majority were living in the camps, but we had people in cities also. And living in the camp, being under control of the conservative group or leaders, itself pushed the people to be more conservative, and they didn't have any possibility to send their children to schools. So they built the international community. Unfortunately, Americans and also the British and Saudi paid a lot of money in order to build those religious schools, madrasas. I think the Muslims here do understand the madrasas, and non-Muslim also, I think with Talibanization of Afghanistan, do understand what is madrasa. Madrasa is a place where the people get education mainly on religious, on religion. So those madrasas made Taliban for us. That now it's Taliban, or Talibanization is very common, unfortunately, in the region. And it was not only the reason in Afghanistan, but also the Islamic revolution in Iran, which brought a lot of conservatism within the region. And it was Islamization of Ziaul in Pakistan. Because Pakistan during Bhutto, before Ziaul was quite open. And open and secular society, but with Ziaul everything became very much based on Sharia, and he was trying to impose. And I remember that first time when I was in Pakistan in '85, when there was a election, Ziaul was the only candidate, and he was saying whoever is Muslim then should vote for Ziaul. So they made themselves as a figure of respect of religion, or almost claim to be the prophet or messenger for the society. So all those regional political situation had a lot of impact on Afghanistan. So none of the side, either the government on that time or the warring faction, did pay attention to education. So what is happening right now, what we are facing in the country, we do not have a lot of human resource in Afghanistan for the reconstruction of Afghanistan. Reconstruction, not only a physical reconstruction, but reconstruction in terms of building the system and the institution in the country, building the judiciary system, building having a more responsible member of the parliament, rather than their political agenda and political ambition in the parliament to impose their own mentality on the people, or passing the laws. In Afghan parliament, we still face a lot of problem because everything they push to and make a connection between the laws in Sharia. I personally think that they do not believe themselves, but they use the religion. And most of the time it's not really based on Sharia, because it is their own interpretation of Sharia. So the word human rights was not really a pleasant word for the authorities, whoever was in power. We had the pro-Russian until 1992, and then we had Mujahideen from 1992 to 96, and then from 96 to 2001, Taliban. In 1992, when the Najib regime collapsed, then the Mujahideen took over, and the government which came to power was not a government selected or elected by the people. It was a government which was negotiated in Pakistan, and they distributed the different ministries among different political parties. So the government was established in Pakistan and moved to Kabul. So then they began, of course, fighting for the power among themselves, and every part of the Kabul city, every part of the country was controlled by one political party or one group. But in Kabul, different part of the city was controlled by different political parties. I remember in 1993, I went to Kabul because I had a small school and small clinic, and I wanted to see, and I took some relief items for the people. And maybe in a place that we could, in normal traffic situation, I could maybe drive for 20 minutes. And for that 20 minutes, I had to take 3 taxis from different ethnic group, because different part of the city was controlled by different ethnic group. Then I had to change the taxi according to that ethnicity, control power, and political party control power. So it shows that how bad was the situation, and everyone was acting without any accountability, without any enforcement of law. Everybody had their own law. That's why the Taliban became in power. In 1994, the Taliban took Kandahar first because we keep saying it was established by Pakistan ISI, which is partially true, because what was happened, the Pakistanis were sending a caravan of their goods to Turkmenistan via Kandahar. And then it was stopped by different political parties, as I said. Then what was happened, a group of people claimed to be Taliban was sent by Pakistani authority to rescue the caravan of the businessmen. So when they entered to the city in order to release the caravan from the different political parties, then they claimed that we want to disarm all the political parties, and we want to enforce the law in Afghanistan. So that is why they were welcomed by the people. They said, okay, at least there is one group who claim that they are going to enforce the law, and who claim that they collect the weapons and disarm the different political parties. So slowly they, in September 94, they took Kandahar. September 95, they took another city, Herat. And then September 96, they took Kabul. Some of those provinces were fall at the hand of Taliban without really a big fighting, because the people were tired of fighting and this kind of anarchism and control by different political parties. So that is, Taliban took over. And the first thing Taliban did was closing the girls' schools, closing even the public bath for women, because the women should be covered fully. Everything was imposed on women the first day when they were taking any city. Then in 98, they took the north in the central part of Afghanistan, because it's different ethnic group. So there were some resistance by those ethnic groups. They violated really a lot of human rights of people. And nobody was there to speak of human rights. We were speaking of human rights, but we were outside of the country, in Pakistan. And particularly, they closed down the school. The women were not allowed to travel. The women were not allowed to work. Only they were allowed to work on medical sector, but the hospital or the branch for female should have been all female. So they were not able to speak with male colleague of the hospital. And I think that one of the reasons why that was happened, in 1992, when Mujahideen took the power in Afghanistan, then all the international community walked away and said they achieved the goal, because the USSR was not there anymore. So their political interests achieved, so they forgot Afghanistan. Most of the NGOs also left Afghanistan. The NGO which was helping the Mujahideen in that time. So what was happened, it was not a lot of news from Afghanistan because the people were not there to go. And for Taliban, they closed down the television station. Television was not allowed, photograph was not allowed, music was not allowed. The first thing they were doing, they were seeing if the people who were driving a car to check if they have a cassette or CD of any kind of music. So that was enough to be punished. So you could see you were able to see that in the street when they had their post, a lot of tapes, either videotapes or the audio tapes, were hanging on either the tree or they're usually putting a stick, because they were putting a rope and blocking the road to stop the people for the searching. So that was a normal scene. You could see the television hanging on the stand for the electricity or on the tree, because watching television was bad enough to be punished. I mean, the people were punished, beaten up. They were entering the people's house after 10 o'clock if they saw the light. They were thinking the people are watching television. And the children were not allowed to fly kite, because they were saying that you try to, the kite looks like a bird. So you try to show that you are trying to create living things. And that is a competition against God. The mentality, I don't know this kind of mentality. I don't understand it. The children were not allowed to play with the toys which looks like animals or any living things. One of these female NGOs in Kabul were making a small duck with the cotton inside for pen, to put the pen on top, on the back of the. That NGO staff was punished because why they're doing such a things. They just entered to the office and they saw that on the table, and that person was punished because they had a duck to put pen on the cotton, fabric and cotton duck to put pen on it. So it was quite difficult. I'm too late. So what is happening now after the 9/11? We have a lot of international intervention in Afghanistan. Of course, the American came with a lot of military forces in order to remove the Taliban from power. And we achieved a lot after the intervention of the international community, but it's not enough. At least there's no official ban on education of girls. We have a lot of children going to school, around 8 million to 9 million. 1/3 of the children who goes to school, although the Ministry of Education shows a much higher percentage, but I think between 33 to 35% are girls. And we do have access to public health is getting better, but it's not for everyone. According to our monitoring of the Commission, we have 55 to 57% of the people who has access to basic health services. It's not really enough at all. We still have, every day we have flight between India and Delhi and Kabul, more than 5-6 flights per day. 80% of those flights are patients who goes to India. There is a lot of people who goes to Pakistan for treatment, and it's a lot of people who goes to Iran for treatment, but at least the 6-7 flight between Delhi and Kabul, 80% of the people, of the passengers in the plane are patients. So it is, we still face a lot of challenges, but with the establishment of the Human Rights Commission, we achieved a lot in Afghanistan in terms of human rights. Using the word human rights is not anymore a crime, at least in the society. We have The office was established in 2002. It was part of the Bonn Agreement, as I said, and it is a constitutional institution. And I'm chairing that commission. We work in different sectors. We work on human rights education. We work on women's rights, promotion and protection. We work on child rights, promotion and protection. We work on the rights of the people with disability, again, promotion and protection. And also we have monitoring and investigation. We do monitor the detention centers. We do monitor the prisons. We are able to release a lot of people who are illegally detained in Afghanistan every year, more than 700 people. We do monitor the juvenile justice sector or juvenile correction centers. We do monitor even hospitals and orphanages and sometimes the schools if it's needed. We do monitor the 17 or 18 basic human rights like access to water, access to education, access to health, and then we publish our socio-economic and cultural rights. We do monitor the political rights also during the elections. We do monitor the political rights from the nomination for the candidate until the day that we have election, and also after counting of the votes also we monitor. And we publish the report sometime jointly with the UN and sometime in our own. UN sometimes is not very, let's say, very bold. We have 14 offices around the country, and I have to say with all the difficulties that we have in Afghanistan, we still face insecurity, which is causing a lot of problem. We still face lack of rule of law. We still face a lot of corruption and nepotism in Afghanistan, which is causing a lot of violation of human rights. But in the region, our Human Rights Commission is really an exceptional institution. None of our neighboring country has. First of all, Pakistan doesn't have Human Rights Commission. Tajikistan doesn't. Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Iran. And we are the strongest within Asia Pacific among the Human Rights Commission, because we have, in terms of the mandate, we are quite wide because it's a lot of need in Afghanistan. And also in terms of the staff, we are the biggest. We have 14 offices around the country, and we have the right and the mandate to monitor those places. And also to give, we do send our shadow reports on all the conventions to the Geneva, to the committees, and we are actually leading those, even in the governmental preparation of a report. We are member. One staff would be the member. And we did exceptional work on transitional justice, that we did a national consultation on the past crimes which is committed in Afghanistan. And it is very exceptional. None of the Human Rights Commission nowhere has done it. Based on that, then we came of a recommendation by the public who brought up, and there's a report, Call for Justice. You can see it in our website, in the Human Rights Commission website. And then an action plan. Although the action plan, all of the action plan is not implemented, but there is something that called the action plan. And we did another big report on the mapping of the crimes in Afghanistan, which is not yet published yet because of the insecurity and because of lack of political support by international community and the Afghan government. And thank you very much. I'm sorry to be so long, but...
No problem. Thank you.
Do we go for question and answer?
Yes, of course. Okay. We have some kind of 10 minutes for questions and answers, and maybe we should highlight that Sima is with us for the coming next 2 days, so there will be also other opportunities to ask questions and to comment. First of all, thank you very much for giving the kind of historic as well as also international background on the human rights situation in Afghanistan, also the linkages that are between the neighboring countries and Afghanistan. And I think you have a very interesting background as the chair of the Afghan Human Rights Commission, as well as a kind of activist who is working locally to establish schools, for example, health centers, etc. So it's both like the political national perspective as well as the local perspective. So you're negotiating and arguing with Mr. Karzai as well as talking to local village leaders. And I also liked it a lot that at the end you also highlighted the positive impacts of your work. Because oftentimes, I mean, Afghanistan, at least in media, looks like a really hopeless case and with lots of problems from different dimensions, etc. And I think this is a very good case study or case best practice that you say the establishment of this Human Rights Commission is really a success story. And you were the one who established it many, many years ago and you now push it further on the very high international global level. This is very important.
Thank you.
So, who, where? Yes, so please.
I have a question regarding, I mean, like for example, in Palestine you have Fatah and Hamas and they exclude each other. But more or less nowadays they reach a point that we cannot, one part cannot leave the other. This could be applied in Afghanistan, like for example, Taliban was excluding the others, now it's excluded. What about the participation, like in the present time and the future? Could Taliban and the present government cooperate together for a better future for Afghanistan? Is there something, a hope in the horizon, or just?
I think that requires, of course, peace negotiation and peace talks, first of all, and then peace building. In my view, currently it's not possible because if you want to really build a peace in a society, first of all, you should have a strong political will on the peace, not use the word peace and negotiation and reconciliation for political agenda. It should be really, you should have peace in your mind rather than to build peace in the society and the community. That is not existing. What was happened actually in Afghanistan 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, the president said that we would like to talk with the Taliban, and he established this jirga, peace consultative jirga. And of course, with the jirga, we fought a lot to have enough women as participants in the jirga. We were able to put a lot of women over there. But then at the end, the final statement was already made, and it was most of the recommendation of women were not included. And they came up with the idea that we should have a high peace council. And then the president established that high peace council and put a lot of the leaders who were part of the problem, not part of the solution, in that high peace council. We have 69 members of the high peace council, 9 of them are women. Again, the president really tried to find women who are quiet and polite, good women, so-called. Because the women who are vocal, they are not good women. And of course, because they are. So he put 9 women in that high peace council, and most of the male members of the high peace council are in the high peace council for their political and personal agenda rather than peace building. So there's a lot of conflict, a statement from the member of the high peace council. So you can imagine how with that kind of a policy, the peace would come? Of course not. The third thing is that we have not really identified our enemy. We don't know with whom we should talk. Because we say the Taliban is a puppet of the RSI in Pakistan. Should we talk with Pakistanis? Or should we talk with the different group, we call him Hizb Islami, Haqqani group, and also Quetta Shura, they're calling. So with whom we should talk? With who's the leader? Should we talk with the leader, or should we talk with the foot soldiers? So it's not clear. We don't know who. I think in my view that we should identify the enemy and then try to talk with that one. Yet we still confused on that battle. Fourth, I think the whole process should be supported by the public, Yes, in case of Palestine, for example, it's Hamas and Fatah, but at least it's clear who's the leader of Fatah, who's the leader of Hamas, and who's the decision maker in Fatah and who's the decision maker in Hamas. We don't know. That's why it's a lot of confusion and it's a lot of negative competition between the international community also. Everybody would like to bring a Talib and talk with Talib. So what has happened once?
Sorry, Sima, maybe
Yes.
we should give the other also the
Yeah, I
opportunity
just
to
finalize
yes.
this because
Okay.
it's a very good question. They brought one man from Quetta. They flew him from Quetta with the NATO plane. And the American generals gave him $200,000 and the president, our president, gave $200,000. And then later on we find out that he was a shopkeeper. So we have a lot of those shopkeepers who now become so rich and they live in Qatar.
Yes. Afghanistan is a country with high cultural diversity. How do you deal with the cultural rights? How do you see the cultural rights within your commission?
Yeah, I think we are promoting cultural rights as a basic human rights. That's why we were pushing, for example, that the different ethnic group children should have the right to study on their own language. But of course it is required, again, strong political will by the leadership within the country to make the curriculums of the school, for example, in Uzbeki language or in Turkmen language or in Baloch language. You know, again, I think the lack of political will for respect of human rights. So when we were working on the constitution, it was fight that the national anthem would be in Pashto or in Persian for 3 days. Nobody was fighting that this right should be included in the constitution or respected in the constitution. But there was a big fight on the national anthem would be. We were saying that let's have the national anthem in Urdu or in English, because it's really it's not the important, the most important things. The most important thing is the respect for human rights and equality in the country and to reduce discrimination. So we still have a lot of problems on that field, but I think we do promote, and it's getting much better because at least in the media we have Uzbeki program and Turkmen program. I mean, Dostum is running a TV channel which does broadcast a lot of program in Uzbeki.
Okay, Saravana.
Thanks very much for your talk. I just want one question is, how much vocal as a Human Rights Commission can be in Afghanistan? And what are challenges? How much freedom you have to make it available to the policymakers or to the government?
We are quite vocal, and are being vocal and being independent. That's why sometimes they don't like us. I give you an example. There was an execution of 16, 17 people 4 or 5 years ago in Afghanistan. So we were really raised our voice. We released a statement and everything almost in the country, including this issue. We said we are concerned about the fair trial. Unfortunately, it's part of the laws in Afghanistan that execution is still in the law, in the criminal law of the country. And the president, it was broadcasted in one of the Pakistani newspaper in the nation, I think, that the Human Rights Commission of Afghanistan said the judiciary system of Afghanistan is not functional. So, and the president was so angry. He called me. He was shouting on telephone that you should have another press conference and say that it's not true. I said, I'm not going to do it. I am personally against the death penalty. Secondly, I'm not going to do what you want me to do. I believe that the judiciary system in Afghanistan is not is not capable to have really a fair trial. None of these people had a defense lawyer. Then he continued to shout on the telephone, and I said, you as a president, you don't have the right to shout at me. And it's not fair way that you're doing. So he said he will introduce me to the Supreme Court counsel, and I said, do it because you have the power. And then he calmed down a little bit because I was shouting also. And I said, go ahead and do it because you have the power and I'm not afraid. So he did introduce us to the Supreme Court counsel. And the Supreme Court counsel said their own things. The Chief Justice, I called the Chief Justice. I said, can I be witness of the trial of my colleague who's our spokesperson? He said, of course. I went there and he said, no, don't come because it's not serious. The president was angry and I just see that. So the whole thing is like that. And we were very, very vocal on the election in 2009. And we are punished because we were very vocal on the fraud and on the election. And he still keeps saying that you did whatever Americans asked you to do. And I said, no, I have a lot of documents. We have a document that a chief of police was filling the boxes of election a day after election. We had a document that the day before election, when the helicopter took the boxes and the ballot paper to one of the districts, and they began to fill it, the district commissioner and staff, because they said, the helicopter is leaving, so we have to fill it. I mean, without asking the people to come and vote. So those were and then we are very vocal on the civilian casualties by the Americans, also by the foreigners. And the bombing, which was done by the Germans 3 years ago in Kunduz, we are the most trusted institution in the country when we do the investigation on those issues. And of course the government used it very much. And also there is a Hizb Islami person who lives in Germany, he's German. He took the case and he won $1 million or €1 million or how many million euros to have project for the victims. But that was not the case. We documented the number of the victims, and we wanted compensation for those people rather than for somebody who's living in Germany to make a name or a business for himself.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.